Hi, everybody. This is Hondo Carpenter. I am your Las Vegas Raiders beat writer for Sports Illustrated and the host of the Las Vegas Raiders Insider Podcast. It's terrific to be with you today. It is Saturday, the 20th of July, just 3 days away from the start of training camp in Costa Mesa. Today's broadcast is really going to be a dive into what to expect from training camp. What is it that you as a fan should expect from training camp? What are some things that I'm going to be looking for from training camp? And aside from the obvious, and we're going to get into all of that today. And I think it's going to be a really good broadcast that you're going to enjoy. I'm getting excited to jump on that bird and head down to Costa Mesa for what's sure to be a really good training camp and what's going to be what I think is a very, very good time. So let's just dig in and get right at it right away. The first thing that I'm going to tell you is I have gotten massive amounts of correspondence, emails, everything from people asking me about getting into training camp. Now, there is very limited knowledge, and you need to understand this has nothing to do with Mark Davis, and it has nothing to do with Tom Telesco and the Raiders. But as of this moment, there is not going to be where anybody can just walk up and watch training camp. The NFL has certain guidelines and rules. So this is going to be determined by the NFL, not by the Raiders. As soon as I get word on it, I promise to disseminate it to you. My understanding is that there's going to be something available for season ticket holders, but I don't know what that is. I don't know what that looks like. I believe that's still being developed. And, well, we'll just have to wait and see. I don't want to say anything that at this point that's not accurate. So that's the first thing about fan involvement. That is why we're at every practice, every press conference. We don't miss anything because we're your eyes and ears, and we're going to bring you all of that and keep you completely informed. We will have we already throughout the offseason average 12 to 14 articles a day. And during the season, it's going to be exponentially higher than that. With every press conference, we'll have video. We're going to have podcasts. We're going to have inside information. What stood out to us? What are some things that we were cognizant of? We'll be bringing that to you. So the first is just addressing the fan issue. I've had some people that what I thought was extremely harsh comments about the Raiders for something that they don't control. That's just not smart, and it's just not fair. So, we endeavor to be very fair. So let's start at the very top. What am I looking for, and what should you be looking for from training camp? I am going to start immediately with Tom Telesco. Tom is a very thorough evaluator, extremely thorough evaluator. In fact, he is one of the few people that I have ever seen who is so thorough in his evaluation, but he is very guarded against paralysis by analysis. So even though he watches a lot of film, he doesn't overthink it. He lets the film tell him what he's seeing. He trusts his instincts. I think that is a very rare. You see a lot of people who are very much evaluators, especially in the NFL, but they overthink it. You see some people in the NFL who spend a lot of time looking at stuff, analyzing stuff, poring over numbers, poring over analytics. But remember, at the end of the day, it's not about X's and O's. It's about Jimmy and Joe's. And so Tom does a very good job. In fact, when I had heard about him before he came to the Raiders, I didn't know him, but I've said to you before, I have multiple friends that consider themselves close to him or know him really, really well. And they all talk to me about him being a great evaluator. And so instantly my red flag goes up. Okay, is there a potential here that this guy is maybe an overthinker? And I've actually found it to be the opposite. Tremendous evaluator, spends vast amount of times evaluating, but is really good about letting the game of football come to him. So I'll put this in a way that I think you'll really understand. A friend of mine played on the offensive line with Green Bay with Brett Favre and subsequently with Aaron, but primarily with Brett Favre. And I asked him one time, what was it that made Brett really good? And he said, he was a gunslinger, and a lot of people thought he just kind of flew by the seat of his pants, and he may have early in his career. He said, but when I knew him, he would watch all the film and be super prepared, but he always knew the other team was changing stuff to try to confuse him. So he used to say, I can't overthink the game. I have to let the game develop and come to me. And he said that one of Brett's greatest skills was that he would watch a ton of film and be ready, but he was just able to adjust on the fly because he didn't have preconceived notions. I thought that was a really good analysis of Brett Favre by my buddy. And I mean, who played with him, so knew. And one of the things that I think Tom Telesco does is he is able to spend all of the time necessary to evaluate, but he lets the game come to him. So how does that reflect the Raiders in the 2024 training camp? This is his first year. And every guy on this team, he is going to allow them to interpret themselves to him. Now, that's important. That's really, really important because you know what? Some people come in with biases against a person. Some people come in and they, everyone's told them, oh, this guy stinks. You got to get rid of him. Okay, he must stink. Nope. Every guy here really has a new page. Every guy here gets a new chance. And I don't think this is revealing anything too big, but he made that clear to the team that, you know what, you get a chance to show me who you are. If you were a star before I got here, and I'm using his voice, obviously not speaking because I'm not Tom Telesco or the Raiders, but using that voice. If you were X before I got here, this is a chance to flip the page and be something different because I'm going to believe who you tell me you are. Now, I think that's super important. My dad used to always say, if you're believing what other people say about somebody, then you may miss an opportunity for them to show you who they are. And I agree with that. And I think it's important. These guys all know you have flipped a page. So let's talk about that. And let's use a couple of names. Okay. Matthew Butler has been a colossal underperformer for the Raiders. And nobody's questioned his character or if he's a good guy. That's not even in doubt. And I've talked about he needs a very, very fast start. Well, part of that is, there's two parts. Number one is you can turn on the film and see that he's been a colossal underperformer. So you have a chance to come in now and boom, perform better. Boom, change the opinion of you. Go out there and create an atmosphere where people can't do anything else but think differently of you. And there are some guys that no matter how good you do, you ever met somebody that maybe you did them wrong years ago or you hurt them years ago, or maybe they're friends of yours and somebody else did and they're still not over it? Those are dangerous people to be around. You're never going to unforget if somebody did you wrong. But you also don't want to be the person that's so jaded that you don't create an atmosphere for people to change or to change their opinion of you. I hired a guy one time. He came to my house came to my office and I'm looking through and interviewing him. This was probably 12 years ago. And I get his resume and I said, you got a great resume. I said, but there's a block of time here where you're don't have anything job listed. What happened? And he looked at me and he told me exactly what happened. He had done a crime and spent some time in jail in a couple of years. I said, all right, what'd you learn from it? And he told me what he learned. And I said, what do you think? What have you done to make sure you don't return to that? And he told me. And we got all done. We shook hands. He goes, thank you for being nice to me. I know I won't get the job, but I really do appreciate that you were nice to me. And I said, well, what are you talking about? What makes you think you're not going to get the job? Have you crawled inside my head? He goes, no, but I know I've been to jail. And I said, did you pay your time? Yes. Have you shown and demonstrated different behavior? Yes. So why would I hold that against you? It amazes me the amount of people who refuse to allow people to change, to grow. And Tom Telesco does that. And just like that gentleman that I hired that became a great employee for many years, Tom Telesco understands, all right, you may have demonstrated this, but I want you to prove to me you've changed. He doesn't come in with a preconceived notion. I think that's very wise of him. Very, very smart of him. And so I'm going to be watching that from the top. I'm going to watch where his eyes go. Obviously, I'm not going to be in his hotel room or his temporary office in Costa Mesa watching film. But I am going to be able to watch where his eyes are. And that's a very, very big deal. Years ago, and when I say years ago, I mean many, many years ago, I was talking with a very successful NFL defensive person. That was Reggie White, the defensive end for the Green Bay Packers and the Eagles or whatever. And I asked Reggie, what's the biggest key to what you do? And he said, I watch the hips. He goes, your eyes can dart, your shoulders can dart, your arms can dart, your feet can dart. And he goes, but I watch the hips. And those hips are going to tell me what you're up to. Simple. Tom Telesco is going to watch people and let them tell them who he is. Now, here's why that's really good. Go back and think about over the Raiders' history, how many great players came here who maybe weren't great where they were previously. Some of them, maybe they didn't get an opportunity. Some of them maybe got an opportunity, but the coaching staff didn't see they were injured or they didn't care. Some of them, maybe the scheme didn't fit. Whatever it was, when the Raiders are at their best, it's when they have reclamation projects. It's when they have people who others didn't want. Man, that's important. That is vitally important because then you can get some really good players on the cheap. Example, Jack Jones. Okay. Jack Jones gave some people reasons to not believe in him. That's factual. All right. All of us in our lives have failed, including you. I know I have. I feel like the Apostle Paul when he's writing the letter and writes, here I am, the chiefest of sinners. Okay, I agree with Paul. But we've all failed. But when you remember, we all have a past, but we all also have a future. So the Raiders were able to say, because of Antonio Pierce, AP's like, wait. I know that what this guy did. I know he screwed up. I'm not saying he didn't, nor am I justifying it. That's the big part. If you find people that admit a past but try to justify it, doesn't work. Hey, guys, I know Jack. I know who he is in here. I want to bring him here. And Jack rewarded him last year. And that's going to be the Tom Telesco approach. I like that. That means guys aren't going to get thrown away. And guys who maybe others have thrown away. The Raiders got a shot at. I love that mentality. So I'm watching that first, starting at the very top. Next, I want to talk about Antonio Pierce. Now, there are several things that he did over his maturation in the interim basis that I thought were impressive. And I want to watch how that continues to evaluate. There is one thing that I learned about AP a long time ago, was that he was constantly getting better. He's never satisfied. Now, I learned that from friends of mine who played with him before he was ever even working with the Raiders. When we would talk about their Super Bowl run, they would just bring him up about who he was, what he was, the way that guy. I mean, that's how I learned the story about prior to the Super Bowl against Tom Brady with the undefeated team. He found something on film and was able to run to the coaches and show it to them, and it was a huge reason why the Giants won. So he evaluates and he changes. So let me give you a couple examples. Early in his interim basis, he had never been a head coach before, and there were clock management issues. Okay, that's normal. And when the clock issues were brought up, what did he say? That's on me. He did what a real man does. It's on me. I screwed up. And I admire that. My father once said that the mark of a real man is not that he's perfect. It's when he's imperfect, he owns it. I love that. And he got that from being a warrior for our country, but he also, it translated into business for him. And AP does that. So what's he do? He goes out and then he puts somebody in charge of red flags. Okay. I don't want to use a red flag that just because my gut or a player tells me, you got to give me information. No, when that proved that didn't work, which wasn't on him, it's on the person he put in the box. What do you do next? Now he's got a guy whose sole job is game management, to be eyes and ears. He's got a lot of things he has to see. So let's put somebody in my ear to help me with game management. That's brilliant. You know, a lot of people say, well, Hondo just likes AP because he just likes him as a guy. Okay, first of all, I totally like him as a guy, and I consider him a friend. But I like Josh McDaniels and consider Josh a friend, but I don't think he had any business being the head coach here. I don't think he does well in that environment. Okay, AP thrives in that environment. He does well in that environment. And if he's left alone and allowed to continue the maturation process as a leader, I think he's going to be very special. I will tell you this, if AP ends up getting fired too quickly here, I totally believe he's going to get another coaching job. And I believe it's going to be with New York. 100%. If the Raiders would not have hired him, I believe he would have been the defensive coordinator this year in the Giants and the coach in waiting. They wouldn't have announced the coach in waiting, and I'm not guessing on that. I sincerely believe that was the plan based on people knowledgeable of the Giants and their thinking process. I really believe that personally. So I think he'll go somewhere else. And I think you need to ride this train, let him grow. You knew what you were getting when you hired him. I think the interim basis was so good for him, but you saw him grow as a coach. So then he goes out and look at his staff. Look at how he built his staff. He built it with a group of guys who are extremely personable. He wanted people who were open, wanted, and needed relationship. So let's use Marvin Lewis and Joe Philbin for a second. Neither one of these guys had to coach again. They had made generational wealth coaching in the National Football League. But both are here because of their age, because of their experience level. He doesn't want to be around a bunch of yes men. Doesn't desire that. It isn't important. My wife gave me one of the greatest compliments in the world one time when she said to me, I love to you, this was just a few months ago, I love that you surround yourself with your closest friends are guys that push you to be a better person and are guys that, she goes, if you were making a mistake in your life, they would be the first ones to call you out because they genuinely love you. And AP surrounds himself with people that generally care about him and who are not afraid to close the door and say, "What are you doing? This is a mistake." Okay, that's maturity. That's why he's been so successful. And so you say, how does this translate, Hondo, into NFL training camp? I want to watch how he continues to grow. So here's an example. When AP was first the interim coach and you'd watch him at practice, he would take notes, but you could tell you could just tell he had never done it before, and he was learning how does he handle a practice. By the time he got to the last 2 or 3 games of the season, and then throughout the entire offseason, different guy. He takes copious notes. He spends a lot of time at every spot. He's learning how to be a CEO. Okay, I just can't watch linebackers. I remember watching him watch quarterbacks and just him not trying to run the drill. It's not a, hey, I'm the great head coach and my coaches suck and you guys are terrible. I'm going to come over and tell you. No, it's when he does add something, it's reaffirming what the coach has said. Maybe something. I remember one time, I think it was the running backs, but may have been the quarterbacks, where he was talking about what he would have been trying to show as a linebacker. It's phenomenal help. Phenomenal help. And those are the things that you want. Those are the things that you covet. Those are the things that you desire. Those are the things that are so vitally important to have. Is you want him being able to go around the field, touch every part of the field. Touch every part of it. And he showed that this offseason. I think this is a fair statement. I was more surprised with the development of AP than anything this offseason. He was stately, extremely reaffirming, not reassuring, reaffirming of his staff to his players. A lot of notes. He doesn't think you got to go in after a practice and have a 3-hour meeting and guys are fighting to be awake. Correct it right on the field. That's why they have the big screens. And then after you correct it on the field, have a short meeting, but get the guys out of there. Keep the game of football a game. Bring in guys who are super smart, who are attention to detail, who are going to approach it like a business, and then give them the respect of their time. So I'm going to be watching him closely. Does he continue? Now, I'm going to tell you something about coaches. You can always tell the area of the team the coach is most concerned about because he spends a lot of time there. That's normal. That's how you want it to be done. So I'm going to watch, where is he keeping his eyes? Who's got his attention? Now, everybody's going to get it. So you watch for a little bit more. I will tell you this. This is a great story. Years ago, Kirk Cousins was a freshman in college. And I watched most of his career. And even though he was really, really young, you could see how much attention the coaches were giving Kirk. They believed in him. They really believed in him. And so it was demonstrated early. You could see, all right, this guy's going to be important or the coaches wouldn't be spending this much time. I want to watch that stuff. That's important. And I won't give a player's name, but there was a guy last year who, if you were watching closely, it was pretty clear AP he certainly interacted with him. He was certainly respectful to him, but you just could tell by the fact he was maybe interacting more with other players at his position And I remember writing in my notes the player's name with a question mark and then put AP and drew an eye. Just two little circles, looked like eyeballs. Just in my notes, so I knew about how much AP was watching him. And lo and behold, he wasn't a Raider very long. Those little things, those are tells. And I'm going to be watching that really closely. Next, the staff. What am I going to be watching for with the staff? There's a couple of things. First of all, AP has hired an entire staff of tremendously good teachers. Tremendously good teachers. These are men that are exceptionally good at coaching. Now, I'm going to share something with you about Nick Saban that a lot of people don't know, and it may shock you. But I get asked a lot, especially when I'm doing public speaking, and I take some questions. Somebody may say, hey, I know you talk about Nick, and can you tell me maybe something about your interactions with him? What have you learned from him? Whatever. Nick Saban was not against colorful language. But there is a difference between telling a human being you are an F up and telling a human being that you effed up. I'm going to say that again for those of you that maybe didn't catch it. There's a difference between telling somebody you are an F up than saying you effed up. There's a difference. There's a difference. You could tell your kids, man, why are you such a screw up? That's just brutal. Who says that stuff to their kids? Who does that? And then there's a difference between saying you're an F up or son, that's not you. You're not a failure. You're not a screw up. So why did you screw up? Do you see the difference? That's this staff. You're going to see a lot of hard coaching and a lot of hard teaching, but you won't see them get attacked. These are grown men talking about the players. And AP wants them treated like grown men, respect of grown men. And I'm telling you, I can't tell you how much this team loves this staff. Just loves them. I mean, AP, when he's the linebacker coach, the quarterbacks knew him, the running backs knew him, the defensive line knew him. Everybody knew him. He went around and made it a point. I want to know the team. I want to know them as people. He went and hired coaches and said to them, I want you to get to know your players and the players personally and the staff. I want us to be a family. And I'm not going to say the position because I don't want to embarrass anybody and I don't have permission. But my wife and I were out and ran into a player and his, I think it's his still a girlfriend. I don't think they're married yet, but maybe they are. But he was talking about having a conversation with a coach that wasn't even his coach or his side of the ball, and walked up, asked him by name about his wife. He was stunned that he remembered. Why? Because you're building a team. I told you guys this story earlier this offseason, that a person in the organization could hear a bunch of people laughing and talking and walked around the corner, and here's Luke Getsy and a bunch of guys around him. And not even close to all offensive guys. Luke Getsy gets in the building. Max Crosby goes to lunch with him. I mean, that's what the Raiders are building. They're building a family. So I'm going to watch that because I think it's going to make players much better because training camps, you got more time, but it's faster than the offseason. So I'm really going to continue to watch the staff, how the staff coaches, how the staff brings that about, how they continue that. I'm going to share something with you. When you are an NFL player and your head coach talks to you, that's a big deal to get that interaction. And every player gets it from AP. But you got a Marvin Lewis. Now, again, for the interest of full disclosure, I am a Marvin Lewis guy. When I covered the Big Ten, I was leading the push for him to get the job at Michigan State as the head football coach. And he came that close to taking it. And then an opportunity was coming for him to be a head coach in the NFL. So he took that, which you can't blame him. Marvin Lewis is an exceptional human being. Marvin Lewis is first of all, he's a terrific person. Number two, he is very caring. Very caring. One of the things that you will hear from people that played for him is that, boy, he would chew my butt. Boy, he was so tough. But man, he cared about me. I heard a story once of a player that went through some very, very hard times in his life. And I heard it from one of his teammates. And if the story serves me correctly, if I remember correctly, Marvin had cut this guy and replaced him with a rookie. So years later, I mean, a long time later, he is not in coaching or anything he's done, but this player's going through a hard time. And somehow Marvin found out about it and calls the guy, and the guy answers his phone and goes, hello. And he goes, hey, so-and-so, it's coach. Yeah, you're my guy. I'm calling to check on you. I care about you. You matter to me. Yep, I may have cut you because it was better for the team, but that's cutting a player. I didn't cut you, the man. You'll always be one of my guys. And his teammate is telling me this story, and his teammate is almost in tears. It's like, can you believe Coach did that? And I go, that's pretty cool. That's Marvin Lewis. You give Marvin Lewis everything you got, and you're his guy the rest of your life. He cares about people. And I think Marvin would probably be a little bit upset with me for saying this, but I don't care. He is an AP. He's a tremendous human being that really loves people. So you're a player. Let's say that you're Jackson Powers Johnson, and you're sitting there taking a drink of water, and Marvin Lewis walks up. He says, hey, JPJ, how's your family? Or, hey, JPJ, I think that's really cool how you added your stepdad's name to your last name. Tell me about that story. That's Marvin. And so all of a sudden you're sitting here, and Marvin Lewis, by the way, is considered a legend among the NFL. And here is a living, iconic legend. Here is a man whose shadow on the game of football is much bigger than the game of football, meaning it's just not what he did as a coach. And all of a sudden you walk away and, wow, I was talking to Marvin Lewis. One of the rookies on this year's class was talking about meeting Max Crosby, and Devontae Adams. Who better to be your two best players than two guys that are salt of the earth, hard workers, driven to win? When you look at this Raider organization, top to bottom, they have everybody on this team is just on the same page. And if somebody demonstrates a change from that behavior, they're going to be gone. But there says something about having a Marvin Lewis or a Joe Philbin. It says something the way Rob Leonard leads that room. Edgar Bennett. I mean, Edgar Bennett is one of the finest human beings walking the planet. And the way he treats people. Ricky Manning. I mean, great player. Ricky Manning wasn't a good player. He was a great player. A great player. And how he leads. He's going to have an exponential impact on Jacorian Bennett. Those type of guys. And there are others. I don't have time to name them all, but just uh, the staff that they hired was top tier staff. And what I think something that AP did is he hired a staff with guys who are long in the tooth, like a Marvin Lewis and a Joe Philbin. And he's got some really young up-and-comers driven. And you don't think having Marvin Lewis and Patrick Graham on that staff makes Rob Leonard better? Ricky Manning better? You don't think that? And then AP goes out, and he could have hired big names for offensive coordinator. But he wasn't looking for a big name. He wanted to win games. And here's Luke Getsy, who looked terrible in Chicago, and most people aren't smart enough to look and understand the circumstances that he did what he was told to do. He knew he was going to get a bunch of grief for hiring Luke Getsy. He knew it, but he didn't care because he knew, I like what Getsy does. I like the way he game plans. He watched him with a UDFA rookie beat his defense. And he liked the way he did it. So what did AP do? He had the integrity to say, I'm not trying to impress Raider Nation with who I hire. I'm trying to impress him with how I win. Let me just tell you something. When AP's career is over with the Raiders, and like 95% of coaches, he gets fired, it's going to be because of wins and losses. And if he keeps his job and leaves on his own terms, it's going to be because of wins and losses that he was able to stick around. And he's able to do that. And that allows him to be true to himself and hire coaches. And he went out and got guys. Some of them are loud like him. Some are not loud. But they all have certain characteristics of him. They're very personable. They care about people. You can't fake that. They're all exceptional teachers, and they all pay extremely close attention to detail. Other than those three things, they're all different. Oh, and they understand the scheme, and their expertise is in the scheme. They get it. So those are some things that I'm watching from training camp. Those are some big things that I'm watching from training camp. Those are some things that are going to tell a really big story. And those are all reasons for you as fans to be extremely optimistic. But there are also three things that you want to see continue. I believe that we will. You know, there's an old saying, everybody has a plan till the bullets start flying. My dad was a warrior, so you learn some of those things. But, you know, when the bullets start flying is when your training kicks in. When your training kicks in, it's muscle memory. This is just what we do. And when the bright lights come on and the stage lights come up and the game now is on national TV, you're going to do what you practice. Just trust your training, trust your practice. And I just want to see that continue. I have no doubts that I will, but I'm going to be watching that closely. And I'll get into more on expectations of training camp on another podcast. But I just want to thank you for listening. Thank you for being a part of today's program. I know that you don't have to. I'm not entitled to you turning on the podcast every day. I have to get up every single day and work hard, work the phones, get information so that I bring you information that you want to consume. My wife and I went to a Chinese restaurant the other day. This was really, really funny. And they were serving pancakes and eggs and bacon along with Chinese food. And I asked the guy, I said, Chinese food and then pancakes and bacon and burgers and all this kind of stuff. And the guy goes, yeah. We weren't doing so good as a Chinese restaurant. So we decided to start serving what people wanted. So we still have some Chinese for people that want Chinese. but we're giving people what they want. I thought that was so funny. I thought it was really cool. And they understand. And I'm going to watch how they continue this process because the lights are on in training camp now. Season's coming. It's been an A if I were grading the offseason for the Raiders from Tom Telesco, Antonio Pierce, and the staff. I give all three an A. I want to see that continue. And I'm going to be watching, and we're going to be talking about it. Thanks, everybody. I'll see you again tomorrow. I hope that you have a wonderful day. Like I said earlier, I know I'm not entitled to you watching. I'm just appreciative that you do. God bless you. Have a great day.